Welcome to what I genuinely believe will be your accounting breakthrough moment. And I'm not here to sugarcoat anything or make you comfortable. I'm here to tell you the truth about how wealth flows, how power accumulates, and how understanding these numbers is literally your pathway to economic liberation. This session on master budgeting is where everything you've learned stops being abstract concepts and starts being the actual blueprint for how billion-dollar empires are built, maintained, and protected. We're diving into the foundational 15, and no cap, these 15 problems are the formula, both the calculation formula and the formula for economic empowerment, for understanding systems that others are deliberately kept ignorant about. This is about your future value, your personal liberation through knowledge, and the financial concept of present value. Because when you can budget like the CFOs at tech companies, consumer electronics giants, and robotics startups, you're not just passing a class. You're acquiring tools that separate those who control resources from those who just need them. I know you all learn differently. Some of you are visual TikTok learners who need to see it. Others are spreadsheet people who live for data. Some need stories to make it stick, and others need to practice repeatedly until it becomes automatic. Here's my promise. I'm going to speak all your languages today, and I'm going to tell you what's real, not what's comfortable. Every concept gets at least 4 different analogies. If the Spotify subscription example doesn't hit, the Starbucks rewards comparison will. If the gaming inventory reference doesn't click, the meal plan analogy will. If the streaming service example doesn't land, the concert ticket economics will. Some of you think in app economy terms, others in restaurant business models, others in clothing brand strategies, and I'm addressing all of it. We're going to connect these accounting concepts to your daily financial reality and to how Fortune 500 companies accumulate massive wealth while small businesses struggle, because understanding the game is the first prerequisite to changing the game, and nobody's going to hand you this knowledge willingly. Whether you're watching this at 2 a.m., grinding before the exam, I respect your hustle. Education is the passport to the future. During your commute, trying to better yourself, rewatching this for the 3rd time because life kept interrupting your education, or actually during class time, respect for showing up and investing in yourself. I've structured this for maximum flexibility. First time through, stay at normal speed and let me walk you through every calculation, every connection, every moment where you see how wealth is actually created and controlled. Reviewing, hit 1.5 times speed and jump to what you need. Pause when you need to process. There's no shame in taking time to truly understand, rather than pretending you get it. Rewind when something doesn't land immediately. This recording is your tool for empowerment. Use it however serves your learning and your future. I'll explain every concept through your world first. The apps you use, the products you buy, the systems you navigate, the economic realities you face, and then show you how the same principles operate at massive scale in corporations building generational wealth. Tomorrow belongs to those who prepare for it today, and your preparation starts right here. So grab your calculator, invest in a real one. You're worth it. Download the materials from the link. Work alongside me. This is active learning. Eliminate distractions, and let's transform your understanding of how wealth is created, measured, and controlled in business. By the end of these 20 slides, you won't just understand budgeting. You'll think like someone who controls resources rather than someone who merely needs them. Let's capitalize on this moment, both literally with accounting capitalization and figuratively with your opportunity to gain knowledge that changes your economic trajectory. Meet Morganton Robotics, pocket-sized AI revolution. Let me introduce you to Morganton Robotics. And yes, I specifically chose pocket-sized AI companion robots because this represents the convergence of consumer electronics, artificial intelligence, and robotics, the industries defining the next decade. Morganton manufactures compact AI-powered personal assistant robots. Think if Alexa, Siri, and a Tamagotchi had a sophisticated baby. These palm-sized robots, about the size of your phone, feature advanced AI, can move around your desk or shelf, recognize faces and voices, manage your calendar, provide reminders, and even display emotions through LED expressions. They're being sold to consumers through Best Buy, Amazon, Target, direct-to-consumer channels, and international distributors. The global personal robotics market is exploding, and Morganton is positioning for major market share. We're examining their July budget planning, real financial mechanics that apply from startups to giants. Here's everything Morganton Robotics needs you to know. I'm giving you all the data right now, all bolded, because withholding information is a control mechanism, and we don't play that game here. Pricing and sales volume. Selling price per unit, $70 per robot. Premium pricing like premium headphones or smart speakers. June unit sales, 8,400 robots. July unit sales, 10,000 robots. August unit sales, 12,000 robots. Back to school demand surge. September unit sales, 13,000 robots. Holiday season ramp up. All sales are on credit. Retailers don't pay manufacturers immediately. Cash collection pattern. 40% collected in month of sale. Quick pay retailers like Amazon. 60% collected in following month. Standard retail net 30 payment terms. June total sales, $588,000. 8,400 robots times $70. Inventory policies. Finished goods, ending inventory, 20% of next month's unit sales, strategic buffer. Raw materials ending inventory, 10% of next month's production needs. Beginning inventories for July. Finished goods, 2,000 completed robots, which is 20% of July's 10,000 units. Raw materials, 5,200 pounds of components, which is 10% of July's 52,000 pounds needed. Production specifications. Each robot requires 5 pounds of materials, AI chipsets, motors, batteries, plastic housing, sensors, LED displays. Raw material cost, $2 per pound, components sourced globally. Each robot requires 2 direct labor hours, assembly, programming, quality testing. Direct labor rate, $15 per hour, skilled technicians and programmers. Variable manufacturing overhead, $10 per direct labor hour, facility costs, equipment, utilities, testing. Raw materials. Payment pattern, 30% paid in month of purchase, immediate payment for critical components, 70% paid in following month, negotiated terms with suppliers. June raw material purchases, $88,880. Selling and administrative variable S&A expense, $1.80 per robot sold. Packaging, shipping, customer support setup. Fixed S&A expense, $60,000 per month. R&D, marketing, corporate offices, software development. This $70 price point positions Morganton between budget electronics and premium smart home devices. Think AirPods Pro pricing territory, Kindle price range, or Ring doorbell economics. This is how Beats by Dre built a billion-dollar brand, sold to Apple for $3 billion. Understanding costs, pricing strategically, delivering undeniable value. This is how GoPro went from startup to $3 billion valuation, mastering unit economics. This is how Fitbit built a wearables empire, acquired by Google for $2.1 billion, comprehending financial planning. This is how Anchor became the dominant charging accessories brand on Amazon, generating $1 billion plus annually. Understanding the numbers behind every product. Knowledge of these mechanics is power, and power builds wealth. Problem 1. Budgeted sales, the foundation of everything. Question: what are the budgeted sales for July? Answer: $700,000. Let me break this down with brutal simplicity because complexity is often used to hide truth from those not in the know. July's unit sales of 10,000 robots multiplied by the selling price of $70 per robot equals $700,000. $700,000 in 1 month from these pocket-sized AI companions. This is your top line, your revenue, the number that determines whether this business survives or thrives. Every calculation that follows stems from this $700,000 figure. This is the foundation of business viability. Think about it like Spotify's subscription model. They know they have 615 million users globally, with 239 million premium subscribers at roughly $10.99 per month. so they can budget approximately $2.6 billion in monthly premium subscription revenue before the month starts and plan everything from artist payments to technology infrastructure to executive compensation. Same principle here. Or consider Netflix, 247 million subscribers globally at average $15.49 monthly price, varies by region and plan, generates roughly $3.8 billion monthly, which funds content creation $17 billion annually, technology, and operations. Or think about Dollar Shave Club before Unilever acquired them for $1 billion. They had subscription boxes at $1 to $9 per month, knew their subscriber count, could predict monthly revenue, and plan accordingly. Or examine BarkBox, dog toy subscriptions. They know subscriber count, know monthly pricing, can budget revenue precisely. Every consumer product business begins with accurate revenue forecasting. Madam C.J. Walker built America's first self-made female millionaire business by understanding her product sales, hair care products, and pricing strategy. Robert F. Smith built Vista Equity Partners into $100 billion plus by understanding software subscription revenue models. Janice Bryant Howroyd built Act One Group to $3 billion by forecasting revenue across thousands of staffing contracts. Oprah Winfrey built her media empire to $2.6 billion net worth through understanding audience value and advertising revenue. These aren't accidents. These are people who mastered the numbers and used that knowledge to build wealth. The why behind the why. This $700,000 budgeted sales figure cascades through everything. Production schedules, materials procurement, labor planning, cash management, profitability projections. Get this wrong and every downstream decision is flawed. Nail this and you can plan confidently, invest strategically, and build deliberately. This is the difference between businesses that create generational wealth, passing down not just money but economic understanding, and businesses that struggle month to month hoping to survive. This number represents not just transactions but capability. The capability to employ people, to invest in innovation, to serve customers, to build something that lasts. Without accurate revenue forecasting, you're guessing. With it, you're planning. The difference is everything. Problem 2. Expected cash collections, revenue versus reality. Question. What are the expected cash collections for July? Answer, $632,800. Here's where truth-telling becomes critical because confusing sales with cash is how people stay broke while looking successful on paper. And the system loves this confusion because it keeps you vulnerable. We collect 60% of June's $588,000 sales equals $352,800. Best Buy, Target, and other retailers who took their contractual 30 days to pay. Then we collect 40% of July's $700,000 sales equals $280,000. Amazon and retailers paying quickly. Add them, $352,800 plus $280,000 equals $632,800. Notice this is $67,200 less than the $700,000 we're selling in July because $420,000 won't hit our bank account until August. Revenue on paper versus cash in hand. Understand this distinction or stay economically vulnerable. This is exactly like being a content creator on YouTube. Your videos get 10 million views in July, earning $20,000 in ad revenue earned. But YouTube doesn't pay creators until 60 days later in September, cash received. Meanwhile, you have editing costs, equipment expenses, and bills due now. Or consider musicians streaming on Spotify. Drake's songs stream 100 million times in July, generating $400,000 in royalties, revenue earned. But Spotify pays artists 2 to 3 months later, cash delayed, while the artist has studio costs, producer payments, and living expenses immediately. Or think about Etsy sellers. They make $50,000 in sales during July revenue, but Etsy holds payments for 3 to 7 days, then deposits to your bank. Then your bank may hold deposits another 2 to 5 days. Cash timing matters. Well, you need to buy materials and ship products now. Apple mastered this dynamic. They collect from customers instantly when you buy an iPhone at the Apple Store or online. Cash in immediately. but pay suppliers on 60 to 120 day terms, cash out delayed, creating massive float that they use for investments, operations, and growth. Amazon's brilliance includes collecting from customers when they order. You pay immediately, but paying third-party sellers 14 days later and paying wholesale suppliers 30 to 90 days later, using this timing difference to fund operations. Walmart collects from customers immediately, cash or card at checkout, but pays suppliers on 30 to 60 day terms, creating working capital advantages. This is how billion-dollar companies maintain massive liquidity despite enormous operations. They master the timing game. The why behind the why. This is how profitable businesses still fail. They have revenue but not cash, and you can't make payroll with accounts receivable. This is exactly how many small businesses fail. They have sales, they're profitable on paper, but cash timing doesn't align with rent, payroll, and supplier obligations. Banks exploit this dynamic through expensive short-term loans and cash flow financing that extract wealth from businesses that don't understand timing. When you hear about cash flow positive versus profitable, they're completely different things. Profitability is accounting theory. Cash flow is survival reality. Master this distinction or remain economically vulnerable, regardless of your revenue numbers. This gap between sales and collections is where many businesses die. Problem 3. Accounts receivable balance. Money you're owed but can't spend. Question. What is the ending accounts receivable balance at the end of July? Answer. $420,000. Here's the reality of revenue versus liquidity. Money you legally earned but can't access yet, and this is where businesses get trapped between success on paper and crisis in reality. July sales were $700,000. We collect 40% immediately, which means 60% remains outstanding. $700,000 times 60% equals $420,000. This $420,000 is your accounts receivable, money you've legally earned, revenue on your income statement, success that investors celebrate, but cash not in your bank account. You can't make payroll with accounts receivable. You can't pay your lease with accounts receivable. You can't buy more materials with accounts receivable. It's wealth on paper, not liquidity in reality. Think about this like a freelance graphic designer's business. You complete a $10,000 logo project for a corporate client in July. Work completed, invoice sent, but they pay net 30, so you won't receive the $10,000 until August. Meanwhile, your rent, Adobe subscription, and electric bill are due now. Or consider rideshare drivers. You complete $5,000 worth of rides in a week, services rendered, but Uber, Lyft deposit payments 3 to 5 days later. Meanwhile, you need gas today to keep working. Or think about restaurants using DoorDash/Uber Eats. They fulfill $50,000 in delivery orders during July, food provided, but the platforms pay out weekly minus their 30% commission, creating cash flow timing issues, while food costs, labor, and rent are immediate. Meta has billions in accounts receivable from advertisers who ran campaigns but haven't paid yet. Money owed but not collected. Google's accounts receivable represents massive advertising revenue earned but not received. Salesforce has huge receivables from enterprise software contracts. Annual subscriptions billed, but collected over time. Every business manages this balance between earning revenue recognition and collecting cash realization. The challenge is the same whether you're a solo entrepreneur with $10,000 in receivables or a corporation with $10 billion in receivables. You need cash to operate, and receivables aren't cash. The why behind the why. This is why companies obsess over days sales outstanding, DSO, how quickly they convert sales to cash. Lower DSO means faster cash conversion and better liquidity. Companies with market power, Apple, Amazon, Nike, demand quick payment from customers while extending longer payment terms to suppliers, maximizing the timing advantage. Weaker companies accept slow payments from customers while suppliers demand quick payment, getting squeezed from both directions. This dynamic concentrates wealth toward powerful players. those interest payments on borrowed money, to cover the receivables gap, extract wealth from smaller players and transfer it to banks. This $420,000 represents temporary illiquidity that requires either cash reserves, credit lines, or strategic financial management, master receivables collection, or pay banks to finance your operations, literally paying interest on your own earned money. Problem 4. Required production, making enough without making too much. Question: what is the required production for July in units? Answer: 10,400 robots. Time to understand production planning, the bridge between market demand and operational reality. We start with July sales of 10,000 robots, what customers want to buy. Add desired ending inventory of 2,400 robots, which is 20% of August's 12,000 units, dash strategic buffer for demand spikes or supply disruptions, giving us total needs of 12,400 robots. But we already have 2,000 robots in beginning inventory, carried forward from June, which was 20% of July's 10,000 units. So we subtract that. 12,400 minus 2,000 equals 10,400 robots we actually need to manufacture this month. This is exactly like a bakery planning daily production. Panera Bread needs to sell 1,000 bagels today. Sales target. Wants 200 bagels left at closing for early tomorrow. Ending inventory buffer. Needs 1,200 total, but already has 150 from yesterday. Beginning inventory. So they bake 1,050 new bagels this morning. Or consider a sneaker boutique's ordering. They plan to sell 100 pairs of Jordans this month, want 20 pairs in stock for next month's early sales, need 120 total, already have 18 pairs in the back, so they order 102 new pairs from Nike. Or think about a coffee shop's milk ordering. They'll use 50 gallons this week, want 10 gallons buffer for next week, need 60 total, have 8 gallons already, so they order 52 gallons from the dairy supplier. This production calculation drives everything. How many workers to schedule, how much material to order, how much factory capacity to reserve, how much working capital to commit. Tesla's gigafactories run these calculations continuously across Model 3, Model Y, Cybertruck, balancing production capacity against demand forecasts against inventory targets. Apple produces iPhones using similar logic. Forecasted sales plus retail channel inventory minus beginning inventory equals required production. Samsung calculates smartphone production this way across dozens of models. Nintendo plans Switch console production the same way, especially critical during high demand periods like holidays, when underproduction means lost sales, and overproduction means excessive inventory. The why behind the why. Notice we're producing 10,400 robots but only selling 10,000, building 400 units of inventory buffer, plus maintaining our 2,400 unit ending inventory target. This is strategic cushioning against demand surprises, shipping delays, or quality issues. But excess inventory ties up cash in products sitting in warehouses costing money, storage, insurance, potential obsolescence. During COVID and chip shortages, companies with inventory continued selling, while lean inventory companies lost sales and market share. But in normal times, excessive inventory drains cash unnecessarily. The 20% buffer policy represents calculated risk management, enough protection without excessive capital tie-up. This balance separates well-managed companies that serve customers reliably without drowning in inventory costs from poorly managed companies that either stock out constantly or carry excessive inventory. Problem 5. Raw materials purchases, buying the components you need. Question: how many pounds of raw materials should be purchased in July? Answer: 52,900 pounds. Let's understand the supply chain calculation connecting production plans to purchasing decisions. We need 10,400 robots produced from problem 4. Each robot requires 5 pounds of materials, AI chipsets from suppliers like Qualcomm or MediaTek, micromotors, lithium batteries, injection molded plastic housings, LED displays, circuit boards, sensors. So production needs 52,000 pounds, 10,400 times 5. Add desired ending raw materials inventory of 6,100 pounds, which is 10% of August's 61,000 pounds needed, because August produces 12,200 robots times 5 pounds each, giving us 58,100 pounds total needed. Subtract beginning inventory of 5,200 pounds, which was 10% of July's 52,000 pound need, and we must purchase 52,900 pounds. Formula: 52,000 plus 6,100 minus 5,200 equals 52,900 pounds. Think about this like Chipotle's food ordering. They need ingredients for this week's burritos and bowls, 52,000 pounds for current production. Want buffer stock in their walk-in coolers for next week, 6,100 pounds ending inventory, need 58,100 pounds total. Already have 5,200 pounds from last week's orders. Must purchase 52,900 pounds from their food suppliers. Or consider a Starbucks location's inventory. They calculate coffee beans needed for this week's drinks, production needs, maintain backup inventory for next week, ending inventory buffer, account for beans already in storage, beginning inventory, then place orders with their distribution center. Or think about a GameStop store buying video games. They forecast this month's game sales, production/sales needs, want games in stock for next month's early buyers, ending inventory, have games already on shelves, beginning inventory, then order the difference from distributors. Amazon's supply chain operates on this principle across millions of products, forecast sales by product, maintain strategic inventory and fulfillment centers, account for existing stock, purchase the difference from suppliers and brands. Target supply chain efficiency comes from optimizing these calculations across hundreds of thousands of SKUs. When Apple orders iPhone components, screens from Samsung/LG, chips from TSMC, cameras from Sony, they're using identical logic at massive scale. When Shein or Fashion Nova order clothing from manufacturers, they use this exact calculation. The precision required when ordering 52,900 pounds of materials worth over $105,000 is why supply chain management is a valuable career skill that commands solid salaries. The why behind the why, that 52,900 pound purchase isn't just the 52,000 pounds needed for July production. We're buying an extra 900 pounds to build our inventory buffer from 5,200 to 6,100 pounds. This inventory build costs cash. We'll see $105,800 in problem 6, but protects against supplier delays, component quality issues, or demand surprises. During the 2021 to 2022 chip shortage, companies with component inventory kept producing while competitors shut down, waiting for parts. Tesla secured battery supply contracts years in advance, maintaining production while rivals faced constraints. The 10% buffer policy is insurance against disruption. Companies that skip this unnecessary cost become vulnerable when supply chains break, as COVID proved. This is strategic resource control. Those who control inputs control their ability to serve customers and grow. Problem 6. Cost of raw material purchases. Writing the check for components. Question: what is the estimated cost of raw material purchases for July? Answer: $105,800. Here's where we quantify the capital commitment required to maintain production capability and understand that capital availability separates companies that scale from companies that struggle and fail. We need 52,900 pounds of robotics components. Each pound costs $2. AI chips, motors, batteries, plastics, sensors. So the investment is 52,900 times $2 equals $105,800. $100,000 purchase order that Morganton's procurement team is cutting to various suppliers, representing negotiated contracts, quality standards, delivery schedules, and payment terms. This is exactly like a restaurant chain's monthly food purchasing. Chipotle spends roughly $200 million monthly on ingredients, chicken, steak, rice, beans, avocados, vegetables, across 3,200 plus locations, which is about $62,500 per location monthly, representing massive supplier relationships and negotiated pricing. Or consider how clothing brands purchase inventory. Fashion Nova might order $50 million in clothing monthly from manufacturers, fabrics, production, finishing, representing thousands of styles across sizes. Or think about Apple's component purchasing. They order billions quarterly in iPhone components, $30 to $40 per phone in screens, $15 to $20 in chips, $10 to $15 in cameras, multiplied by 50 to 60 million units quarterly equals $3 to $4 billion in component purchases. Or examine car dealerships. They purchase $2 to $5 million monthly in vehicle inventory from manufacturers, financing these purchases while waiting for retail sales. Warren Buffett's investment philosophy includes understanding purchasing power and supplier leverage. When Apple orders components for 200 plus million iPhones annually, they negotiate prices smaller brands can't match. Economies of scale create structural advantages. When Walmart purchases consumer goods, their massive volume gives them pricing leverage. This is how economic power compounds. Scale enables better pricing. Better pricing improves margins. Better margins fund growth. Growth increases scale. Smaller competitors ordering 5,000 units get worse pricing than Morganton ordering 52,900 pounds, which gets worse pricing than Apple ordering 50 million units. This isn't fair, but it's reality. The why behind the why. This $105,800 purchase decision requires cash flow analysis, supplier evaluation, and strategic timing. Buy too early, and you tie up cash in inventory that could be earning returns elsewhere. Buy too late and production stops, sales opportunities disappear, and customers buy from competitors instead. Negotiate poor prices, and your margins suffer permanently compared to competitors with better deals. This is where good management shows up. Companies that negotiate effectively, time purchases strategically, evaluate suppliers rigorously, and manage relationships professionally, gain margin advantages that compound into millions in additional profit over time. Those percentage points in margin difference between well-managed purchasing and sloppy purchasing multiply across millions in revenue, generating hundreds of thousands in additional profit that funds R&D, marketing, growth, and resilience. Master purchasing or stay permanently disadvantaged against competitors who do. Problem 7. Cash disbursements for materials. When money actually leaves your account. Question. What are the total estimated cash disbursements for raw materials purchases in July? Answer. $93,956. Now we separate accounting theory from economic reality, and this gap represents either opportunity or vulnerability, depending on which side of the power dynamic you're on. We're paying 70% of June's purchases of $88,880 equals $62,216, the delayed payment from last month's component buying, plus 30% of July's purchases of $105,800 equals $31,740, immediate payment for current component orders. Add them together, $62,216 plus $31,740 equals $93,956 cash, actually leaving Morganton's bank account in July. Notice this is $11,844 less than the $105,800 they're purchasing because $74,060 won't be paid until August. This timing difference is everything in business survival and growth. This is exactly like using Klarna or Afterpay for shopping. You buy $400 worth of clothes today, purchase made, pay $100 now, 30% immediate, and owe $300 later in installments over 6 weeks, 70% delayed, allowing you to have the clothes now while spreading the cash outflow. Or consider credit card usage. You charge $3,000 in expenses during July, purchases made, pay $900 before the grace period ends, 30% to avoid interest, and carry $2,100 to next month's payment, 70% delayed, managing cash flow by timing payments strategically. Or think about business-to-business transactions. A coffee shop orders $10,000 in supplies from Cisco, order placed, pays $3,000 on delivery, 30%, and owes $7,000 in 30 days, 70%, preserving cash for immediate needs, like payroll and rent. Amazon revolutionized retail partly through payment timing mastery. Collect from customers instantly when they order, cash in immediately, pay suppliers and sellers 14 to 90 days later depending on arrangements, cash out delayed, creating massive float. They deploy for expansion, technology investment, and competitive pricing. Costco collects membership fees upfront, immediate cash, sells inventory quickly, fast cash generation, but pays suppliers on 30-plus day terms, delayed cash out, creating working capital advantages worth billions. Apple operates similarly. Customers pay immediately, but suppliers get paid 60 to 120 days later, creating capital they invest in R&D, retail expansion, and strategic acquisitions. The why behind the why. The $105,800 purchase creates a liability on Morganton's books. Accounts payable, they owe this money, but only $93,956 impacts July's actual cash position. This $11,844 difference can be strategically deployed, covering unexpected costs, investing in marketing, earning interest in high-yield accounts, or simply providing financial breathing room. Multiply this dynamic across hundreds of transactions, and you understand why successful companies have treasury departments managing payment timing obsessively. But here's the real truth. Large companies with market power can demand these favorable terms. Smaller suppliers often must accept take-it-or-leave-it payment terms from larger customers. This dynamic systematically concentrates wealth. Powerful buyers preserve cash, while smaller suppliers must either finance operations through expensive loans or factor receivables at punishing rates. Those interest payments extract wealth from smaller players and transfer it to financial institutions and powerful corporations. Master payment timing or pay others, literally with interest, for your lack of sophistication. Problem 8. Accounts payable balance. Money you owe but haven't paid yet. Question: what is the estimated ending accounts payable balance at the end of July? Answer: $74,060. Here's the mirror image of accounts receivable. Instead of money others owe you, this is money you owe others, and both sides determine whether you're in a position of financial strength or weakness. July purchases were $105,800. We paid 30% immediately, $31,740. Which means 70% remains outstanding. $105,800 times 70% equals $74,060. This is your accounts payable, money you've legally obligated to pay, expenses appearing on your income statement, but cash not leaving your bank account yet. This $74,060 represents either strategic liquidity management, if you're financially strong, or dangerous financial pressure, if you're cash-strapped. Think about this like your monthly bills. You owe $1,500 in rent, due date approaching, $200 for utilities, payment pending, $100 for streaming services, auto pay scheduled, and $300 for credit card minimums, deadline looming, totaling $2,100 in accounts payable, money you legally owe but haven't physically paid yet. Or consider a small business owner's reality. They owe $8,000 to suppliers for inventory, payment due in 30 days, $3,000 to the landlord for rent, due first of month, $2,000 in employee reimbursements, submitted last week, and $1,500 for insurance, monthly bill, creating $14,500 in accounts payable they must manage carefully against cash inflows. Or think about a student's financial obligations. Tuition of $5,000, payment plan installment coming, textbooks of $800, bookstore account balance, meal plan of $1,200, semester payment due, and laptop financing of $600, monthly payment, all representing payables requiring cash management. Every business manages substantial payables. Meta owes billions to data center contractors, equipment vendors, and content creators at any moment. Money owed but not yet paid. Google carries payables to hardware suppliers, advertising partners, and service providers. Amazon famously carries $78 billion plus in accounts payable, 2023 figure. Not financial distress, but strategic working capital management at scale using supplier credit to fund operations. Costco operates similarly. Inventory moves fast, cash comes in quickly, but suppliers get paid on extended terms, creating structural capital advantages. This is how powerful companies maintain liquidity while smaller players struggle. The why behind the why. This $74,060 liability gives Morganton an interest-free loan from suppliers. They have the components, can use them in production, can build and sell robots, can collect from customers, all while still holding onto this cash for another month. That's powerful leverage if you have strong supplier relationships and creditworthiness. But abuse it, pay late, make excuses, play games with vendors, and suppliers cut you off, demand cash up front before shipping, raise prices to compensate for your payment risk, or deprioritize your orders when capacity is tight. The balance between extending payables, preserving cash longer, and maintaining supplier relationships, ensuring reliable supply and favorable treatment, separates strategically managed companies from short-sighted ones. During crises, 2008 recession, COVID disruptions, companies with strong supplier relationships got priority allocation of scarce resources. Companies with reputations for slow payment got cut off first. Trust matters, relationships matter, reputation matters, and all are built through fair dealing even when you have leverage to extract more. Problem 9. Ending raw materials. Inventory balance. Capital sitting in your warehouse. Question. What is the estimated ending raw materials inventory balance at the end of July? Answer, $12,200. Let's value what's sitting in the warehouse because inventory represents capital converted from liquid cash into physical components, strategic buffer if managed well, inefficient capital deployment if mismanaged. From problem 5, ending raw materials inventory is 6,100 pounds. Each pound costs $2, so the value is 6,100 times $2 equals $12,200 in robotics components, AI chips, motors, batteries, circuit boards, plastic housings, sitting in Morganton's warehouse, representing cash converted to materials. It's an asset, it's necessary for production continuity. It's strategic protection, but it's not liquid. Can't pay employees with inventory. Can't pay rent with inventory. Can't invest in marketing with inventory. Think about your personal inventory costs. Maybe you spent $500 stocking your dorm room or apartment with groceries, snacks, toiletries, and supplies at the beginning of the semester, inventory investment, which will be used over time, inventory consumption. But that $500 is tied up and unavailable for concert tickets, eating out, or other immediate wants, or consider a sneaker reseller's business. They spend $5,000 buying limited release Jordans and Yeezys, inventory purchase, planning to resell for $8,000, gross profit target. But until they sell, that $5,000 is locked in shoeboxes in their closet, inventory holding, unavailable for other opportunities. Or think about a college student's textbook costs, spending $800 on books at semester start, inventory investment, using them throughout the term, inventory utilization, but unable to access that $800 for anything else until selling them back, inventory liquidation. Amazon's warehouses globally contain tens of billions in inventory value, products purchased from brands and sellers, stored in fulfillment centers, waiting for customer orders. This enables their legendary 1 to 2 day shipping, but requires massive capital investment in inventory and warehousing infrastructure. Apple maintains strategic inventory of critical iPhone components, especially for chips, screens, and cameras where suppliers are limited, protecting against supply disruptions, but tying up billions in components. During recent supply chain crises, companies with inventory thrived while lean inventory companies lost sales. Target maintains roughly $15 billion in inventory across stores and distribution centers, necessary for serving customers but requiring enormous working capital. The why behind the why. That $12,200 isn't earning investment returns, isn't available for other uses, isn't providing operational liquidity, but it's insurance against supplier failures, shipping delays, quality rejections, or demand spikes. During COVID, chip shortages, and logistics meltdowns, companies with inventory buffers continued operating, while lean inventory companies scrambled desperately. The 10% buffer policy means Morganton sacrifices $12,200 in liquidity to ensure production continuity and customer service reliability. Zero inventory would free up $12,200 cash, but risk production stoppages, costing far more than $12,200 in lost sales, damaged customer relationships, and market share lost to competitors who can deliver. Excessive inventory ties up too much capital and risks obsolescence, especially critical in fast-changing technology where components become outdated. The optimal balance requires demand forecasting, risk assessment, supplier reliability analysis, and strategic judgment. Companies that master this balance maintain capital efficiency without sacrificing operational reliability, serving customers consistently without drowning in inventory carrying costs. Problem 10. Direct labor cost, paying the people who build your product. Question: what is the total estimated direct labor cost for July? Answer: $312,000. Let's quantify the human capital investment required for manufacturing and understand that labor isn't merely a cost to minimize, but the value creation engine that transforms materials into sellable products. From problem 4, we're producing 10,400 robots. Each robot requires 2 direct labor hours. These are skilled technicians doing precision assembly, programming, quality testing. So we need 20,800 total direct labor hours, 10,400 times 2. Each hour costs $15, which is $31,200 annually for full-time work, solid middle-class wage. So total direct labor cost is 20,800 hours times $15 equals $312,000. $300,000 in wages for 1 month to the people who physically transform components into functioning robots. Think about this, like a restaurant's labor costs. A busy Chipotle location serving 1,000 plus customers daily might spend $40,000 to $50,000 monthly on crew member wages. Line workers, prep cooks, cashiers at $13 to $17 per hour, representing 25 to 30% of revenue and enabling them to serve all those burritos, bowls, and tacos. Or consider a retail store's payroll. A Best Buy location might spend $80,000 to $100,000 monthly on sales associates, geek squad techs, and supervisors, enabling them to serve customers, process transactions, and provide technical support. Or think about a coffee shop's labor. A busy Starbucks location might spend $50,000 plus monthly on baristas, shift supervisors, and managers, representing the largest operating expense after rent, and enabling them to serve thousands of customers daily. Tesla calculates labor hours per vehicle and fully loaded wage rates, including wages, benefits, payroll taxes, training, equipment, to model production costs and profitability. When Tesla produces 400,000 vehicles quarterly, with roughly 20 to 30 labor hours per vehicle, at $30 to $40 per hour, fully loaded, they're budgeting hundreds of millions in direct manufacturing labor quarterly. Amazon's fulfillment centers calculate picker, packer, and shipper labor hours against wage rates, $15 to $20 per hour base, and productivity targets, items per hour. Apple's manufacturing partners like Foxconn in China track assembly labor hours per device to quote accurate manufacturing prices. Every manufacturing business globally runs these calculations, break production into units, calculate hours per unit, multiply by wage rates, manage to those labor budgets obsessively. The why behind the why. This $312,000 monthly labor cost, $3.744 million annually, represents roughly 1,040 hours monthly per employee times 20 full-time equivalent workers, or about 30 workers working part-time schedules. This math shows scale. 20,800 total hours divided by 173.3 hours per full-time employee monthly equals 120 full-time equivalent workers for production alone, which seems high for 10,400 units. But remember, each unit takes 2 hours of direct labor. This labor cost is variable. Produce more units, need more hours, spend more money. Cut production, hours decline, costs decrease proportionally. This is why manufacturing companies obsess over labor efficiency. Every minute saved per unit, multiplied across thousands of units, equals major cost reductions and improved competitiveness. Automation investments are justified by calculating labor hours eliminated, multiplied by wage rates, multiplied by production volumes. If a $500,000 robot eliminates 5,000 hours annually at $15 per hour, it saves $75,000 yearly and pays for itself in 6 to 7 years while improving consistency. Problem 11, unit product cost, what it really costs to make one robot. Question, if we assume there is no fixed manufacturing overhead and the variable manufacturing overhead is $10 per direct labor hour, what is the estimated unit product cost? Answer, $60 per robot. Let's break down the complete manufacturing cost structure. Understanding unit economics is fundamental to business viability and survival. Each robot needs 5 pounds of materials at $2 per pound equals $10 in direct materials, components, chips, motors, batteries, housing. Each robot needs 2 hours of direct labor at $15 per hour equals $30 in assembly and programming wages. Each robot generates 2 hours of manufacturing overhead at $10 per hour equals $20 in factory costs, facility rent, equipment depreciation, utilities, quality testing, supervision. Add them together, $10 plus $30 plus $20 equals $60 total cost per robot. We're selling for $70, so we have a $10 contribution margin per unit before S&A expenses. That's a 14.3% gross margin. Think about the true cost structure of products you use daily. Your $7 Starbucks latte costs them roughly $1.50 to make. Coffee beans, 30 cents. Milk, $0.4. Cup and lid, $0.2. Flavorings, $0.1 plus $1.50 in labor. 3 minutes of barista time at $30 per hour fully loaded, plus $1 in overhead, rent, equipment, utilities allocated per drink, equals $4 total cost. Sold for $7, generating $3 gross profit, 43% margin. Or consider your favorite fast food. A Chipotle burrito bowl costs them roughly $3 in food, $2 in labor, $1.50 in overhead equals $6. 50 cents total cost. Sells for $10 to $11, generating $3.50 to $4.50 gross profit, 35 to 40% margin. Or examine smartphone economics. Your $300 Android phone costs roughly $150 in components, $30 in assembly labor, $20 in overhead equals $200 total manufacturing cost, sold for $300, generating $100 gross profit, 33% margin. Apple's legendary product costing shows an iPhone selling for $1,000 costs roughly $450 to $500 to manufacture, components $400, assembly $100, $30 to $40, overhead $20 to $30, generating $500 to $550 gross profit per device, 50 to 55% margin, which funds R&D, $30 billion annually, retail operations, marketing, and generates massive cash flow. Nike shoes retailing for $150 might cost $25 in materials, $5 in labor, $5 in factory overhead equals $35 total cost, generating $115 gross profit, 77% margin, that funds athlete sponsorships, marketing, design, and brand building. Every successful product business has mastered unit economics, what each unit costs, what each unit sells for, what margin results, whether that margin covers fixed costs and generates returns. Get unit economics wrong, and scale makes losses bigger, not profits. The why behind the why. That $10 margin, $70 price minus $60 cost is before selling and administrative expenses of $1.80 per unit variable, plus allocated fixed costs. So Morganton isn't pocketing $10 per robot. They still need to cover sales commissions, shipping costs, marketing, R&D, software development, executive compensation, and corporate infrastructure. This is why scale matters enormously. If fixed costs are $60,000 monthly, they need to sell 6,000 units just to break even on fixed expenses. $60,000 divided by 6,000 units equals $10 per unit. $10 contribution margin per unit equals 6,000 break-even units. And every unit beyond 6,000 contributes $10 toward profit. At 10,000 units, they're covering fixed costs plus generating $40,000 in contribution to profit. 10,000 minus 6,000 break-even times. $10 contribution equals $40,000. If they scale to 20,000 units monthly, contribution jumps to $140,000. 20,000 minus 6,000 times $10 because fixed costs stay at $60,000 regardless of volume. This is operating leverage in action, why scale creates exponential profit growth. Problem 12. Ending finished. Goods inventory. Balance. Completed robots waiting to ship. Question. What is the estimated ending finished goods inventory balance at the end of July? Answer. $144,000. We need closure here, both closing out this inventory calculation and understanding how finished product inventory value accumulates on balance sheets. From problem 4, ending finished goods inventory is 2,400 completed robots, that 20% buffer for August demand. And from problem 11, each robot costs $60 to manufacture, so the value is 2,400 robots times $60 equals $144,000. This is $144,000 worth of completed robots sitting in the finished goods warehouse ready to ship to customers, representing completed manufacturing work, but unrealized revenue until sold. This is exactly like a car dealership's lot inventory. They have 300 vehicles on the lot, finished goods inventory. Each vehicle cost them $30,000 from the manufacturer, unit cost, representing $9 million in inventory investment sitting on their lot, finished goods inventory value, generating zero revenue until customers purchase them, but incurring costs like flooring interest, insurance, and lot maintenance daily. Or consider a GameStop store's inventory. They have 5,000 video games and consoles in stock, finished goods, each costing them $40 average wholesale unit cost, representing $200,000 tied up in inventory, finished goods value, earning nothing until customers buy them but requiring display space, security, and insurance. Or think about a clothing boutique. They have 1,000 pieces of clothing in stock, finished goods. Average wholesale costs $30 per piece, unit cost, representing $30,000 in inventory, finished goods value, producing zero revenue until sales occur. Apple maintains finished goods inventory globally. Millions of iPhones, iPads, MacBooks, and accessories in various distribution stages, completed in factories and transit to distribution centers, sitting in Apple stores, stocked at carrier stores and Best Buy, all representing billions in inventory value, waiting for consumer purchases. Amazon's fulfillment centers contain finished goods inventory valued in tens of billions, products ready to ship to customers within hours or days, costs already incurred by Amazon when purchasing from suppliers or brands, revenue pending customer orders. Tesla maintains finished vehicle inventory at delivery centers worldwide, each vehicle representing $40,000 to $100,000 plus dollars in manufacturing costs, accumulating to massive inventory value, awaiting customer deliveries. The why behind the why. This $144,000 in finished goods represents cash converted from liquid to product form before revenue realization. Its strategic buffer can immediately fulfill orders without production delays, enabling fast delivery and high customer satisfaction, but also risk. If demand doesn't materialize as forecasted, inventory sits unsold, potentially requiring discounting or write-offs. During pandemic lockdowns and stimulus-driven demand surges, companies with finished goods inventory captured sales, while competitors waited weeks for production, gaining market share permanently from dissatisfied competitor customers. But companies with excessive inventory when demand collapsed, remember Peloton's disaster with $1 billion plus in excess inventory, faced huge write-downs, destroying shareholder value. There's an optimal inventory level. Below it, you lose sales to stock-outs. Customers buy from competitors who have stock. Above it, you tie up excessive cash, earning no returns, while incurring storage and obsolescence risks. This 2,400 unit buffer, 20% of next month's 12,000 unit forecast, represents Morganton's calculated bet that demand will hold and inventory will turn quickly. Problem 13. Cost of goods sold and gross margin, core business profitability. Question: what are the estimated cost of goods sold and gross margin for July? Answer: COGS equals $600,000. Gross margin equals $100,000. Let me show you where profitability actually starts, in the fundamental economics of making and selling products at prices exceeding costs. Unit sales are 10,000 robots from problem 1. Unit product cost is $60 from problem 11. So cost of goods sold is 10,000 times $60. $60 equals $600,000. This is what it cost Morganton to manufacture the robots they're selling this month. Gross margin is sales revenue minus COGS. $700,000 minus $600,000 equals $100,000. This $100,000 gross margin is what remains to cover all other business expenses: marketing, R&D, administration, rent, interest, taxes, and hopefully generate profit. The gross margin percentage is 14.3%. $100,000 divided by $700,000, meaning for every dollar of sales revenue, roughly 14 cents remains after manufacturing costs. Think about this like a food truck's daily economics. They serve 200 customers, generating $3,000 revenue, sales. Ingredients and packaging cost them $1,200, COGS, leaving $1,800 gross profit, 60% gross margin, which must cover the truck payment, gas, permits, insurance, owner's time, and hopefully leave profit. Or consider a freelance designer's project economics. They charge a client $10,000 for a branding project revenue. Software subscriptions and stock assets cost $1,000, COGS, leaving $9,000 gross profit, 90% gross margin, which must cover their time, office rent, computer equipment, taxes, and living expenses. Or examine a barbershop. They generate $8,000 weekly from haircuts, revenue. Supplies cost $800, COGS, products, towels, cleaning, leaving $7,200 gross profit, 90% gross margin, covering chair rent, utilities, licenses, and barber income. Apple's gross margin on products runs 43 to 44%, meaning for every $1,000 iPhone sold, about $440 remains as gross margin after manufacturing costs, 560 COGS, funding their enormous $30 billion annual R&D budget, 500 plus retail stores globally, marketing campaigns, corporate infrastructure, and generating massive cash returns to shareholders. Walmart operates on thin 25% gross margins. For every $100 in sales, $75 is COGS and $25 is gross margin, requiring massive volume to generate meaningful profits. McDonald's runs roughly 40% gross margins on food sales, $10 in sales, $6 in food costs, $4 gross profit per transaction, multiplied by billions of transactions annually. Gross margin percentage varies dramatically by industry. Software companies run 70 to 90% gross margins, very low COGS. Retailers run 20 to 40% gross margins. Manufacturers run 30 to 50% gross margins typically. The why behind the why. This $100,000 gross margin is just the starting point for understanding real profitability. It's called gross because it's before deducting all the other stuff, operating expenses. A company could have strong gross margins but still lose money massively if operating expenses exceed gross margin. Amazon famously ran at low or negative net margins for years while building infrastructure. They had positive gross margins on sales, but intentionally invested heavily in fulfillment centers, technology, and expansion, sacrificing short-term profits for long-term dominance. The 14.3% gross margin tells us about Morganton's pricing power relative to manufacturing costs. If competition forces prices down from $70 to $65, gross margin drops to $50,000, 50% reduction in margin from $100,000 to $50,000, showing devastating sensitivity of profitability to pricing. Conversely, if they reduce costs from $60 to $55 through efficiency improvements, gross margin jumps to $150,000, 50% increase, showing why operational excellence matters enormously. This margin represents the battleground where business success or failure is determined. Problem 14. Selling and administrative expenses. Running the actual business. Question. What is the estimated total selling and administrative expense for July? Answer. $78,000. Real talk. This is where a massive portion of that $100,000 gross margin disappears into the reality of running an actual business beyond just manufacturing products. We have variable S&A expenses of $1.80 per robot sold times 10,000 robots equals $18,000. These are costs scaling with sales volume, packaging materials, outbound shipping to retailers, customer support setup, sales commissions, credit card processing fees. Then we add fixed S&A expenses of $60,000 per month, cost hitting every month regardless of sales, executive salaries, office rent, insurance, software licenses, R&D team, marketing department, legal and accounting services, utilities. Total S&A expenses, $18,000 variable plus $60,000 fixed equals $78,000. Notice this consumes 78% of our $100,000 gross margin, leaving only $22,000 for net operating income before interest and taxes. This is exactly like your personal monthly expenses structure. You have variable expenses scaling with your activity, $12 per Uber ride, $8 per DoorDash order, $15 per night out, $5 per coffee. If you go out more, you spend more, variable expenses. Then you have fixed expenses hitting regardless, $850 rent, $60 phone bill, $40 streaming subscriptions, $120 car insurance, $100 utilities. These hit whether you stay home all month or go out every night, fixed expenses. Your total S&A might be $1,800 monthly, $300 variable plus $1,500 fixed, which comes from your income, gross margin from your job, to determine what you can actually save or spend freely, your net income. Cut variable spending to $100, your fixed costs remain at $1,500, still requiring $1,600 minimum monthly to survive. Meta spends tens of billions annually on S&A, engineers' salaries, content moderation armies, data center operations, sales teams globally, legal departments, lobbying, and Mark Zuckerberg's security detail, disclosed in SEC filings at $10 million plus annually. Apple's S&A includes 500 plus retail stores worldwide, customer support infrastructure, marketing campaigns, think every iPhone commercial during NFL games, legal departments protecting IP, and executive compensation. Amazon's S&A includes their massive AWS sales organization, customer service operations globally, technology development teams, and logistics management. These companies generate such enormous gross margins that even multi-billion-dollar S&A expenses leave substantial operating income. But for a company like Morganton, with $100,000 gross margin, $78,000 S&A creates significant profitability pressure. The why behind the why. That $60,000 fixed monthly expense represents 60% of gross margin, regardless of sales volume. This is the overhead burn rate that keeps many entrepreneurs awake at night. If sales drop to 5,000 units, gross margin would fall to $50,000, 5,000 times $10 contribution per unit. But fixed S&A stays at $60,000, creating a $10,000 operating loss before considering the $9,000 in variable S&A. 5,000 times $1.80, resulting in $19,000 monthly loss. This is why companies obsess over reaching scale that covers fixed costs comfortably, spread fixed expenses across more units, and per unit fixed cost drops dramatically. At 20,000 units monthly, gross margin would be $200,000, fixed S&A, still $60,000 plus $36,000 variable. 20,000 times $1.80 equals $96,000 total S&A, leaving $104,000 operating income. More than double the units, but nearly 5 times the operating income, because fixed costs don't double with volume. This is operating leverage. Why scale creates exponential profit growth, why startups chase growth obsessively, and why market leaders defend market share ruthlessly. Problem 15. Net operating income, the actual bottom line. Question. What is the estimated net operating income for July? Answer. $22,000. We've reached the actual bottom line, both the literal bottom line of the income statement and the figurative bottom line, determining whether this business makes money or loses money. Take gross margin of $100,000 from problem 13. Subtract S&A expenses of $78,000 from problem 14, and we arrive at net operating income of $22,000. This is the profit from core operations before considering interest expense and income taxes. This is what the fundamental business generates. That's a 3.1% net operating margin, $22,000 divided by $700,000 sales, meaning for every $100 in sales revenue, $3.10 flows to operating profit. No cap. These are the accounting period facts that actually matter for business survival and owner wealth creation. Think about this like your net income after covering all expenses. You earned $3,000 this month from your job or side hustle, revenue. Spent $2,400 on necessities and basics, COGS equivalent. Spent $400 on everything else from subscriptions to social activities to transportation, S&A expenses, leaving you with $200 in actual savings, discretionary money, net operating income. That $200 represents what you can use for investing, building emergency funds, or true discretionary spending. It's what actually remains after covering everything mandatory. That's roughly 6.7% of your income, better than Morganton's 3.1%, showing their business is more financially tight than your personal finances. Or think about a small business owner's reality. Their shop generates $50,000 monthly revenue, costs $35,000 in product costs, COGS, and $13,000 in operating expenses, S&A, netting $2,000 monthly profit, 4% margin before paying themselves a salary, barely sustainable. Apple's net operating margin runs around 30%. They turn $100 in revenue into about $30 in operating income before taxes. Phenomenal profitability reflecting pricing power, operational excellence, and economies of scale. Walmart's net operating margin is around 4%. They turn $100 in revenue into about $4 in operating income. Razor-thin margins compensated by absolutely massive volume, over $600 billion annually. Amazon's retail operations run around 2 to 5% operating margins depending on the quarter, while AWS, cloud services, runs 25 to 30% operating margins, demonstrating how different business models within one company generate vastly different profitability. Tesla's operating margins have ranged from negative during scaling phases to 15% plus during peak efficiency periods, showing how operational maturity impacts profitability dramatically. The why behind the why. This $22,000 on $700,000 sales represents 3.1% net operating margin, which is honestly pretty tight. There's not much room for error. If retail prices drop just 5% to $66.50 per robot, revenue falls to $665,000. Gross margin drops to $65,000 because COGS stays at $600,000, and after $78,000 S&A expenses, They have a $13,000 operating loss instead of $22,000 profit. A 5% price cut destroys profitability completely. This shows devastating sensitivity to pricing pressure. Conversely, if they reduce manufacturing costs from $60 to $57 per unit through efficiency, 5% cost reduction, gross margin jumps to $130,000, and after $78,000 S&A, they'd have $52,000 operating income, more than double the profit from a 5% cost reduction. This asymmetry shows why companies obsess over operational efficiency and defend pricing power ruthlessly. Scale dramatically helps. At 20,000 units monthly, revenue doubles to $1,400,000, gross margin to $200,000, but S&A only increases to $96,000, $36,000 variable plus, $60,000 fixed still, generating $104,000 operating income, 4.7 times more profit from 2 times revenue, because fixed costs don't scale proportionally. This operating leverage is why successful companies grow aggressively and why market leaders defend market share desperately. Scale advantage compounds into dominant profitability advantage. Integration, the master budget flow, how everything connects. Now let's connect all 15 problems into the complete story of how businesses plan comprehensively. This isn't random problems for academic exercise. This is the master budget framework guiding every successful company from startups to Fortune 500 giants, just scaled to teaching size so you can understand the mechanics without drowning in zeros. The complete interconnected flow. Sales budget. Problem 1, $700,000 revenue, drives cash collections. Problem 2, $632,800 actually received, and creates accounts receivable. Problem 3, $420,000 still owed. Sales volume determines production requirements. Problem 4, 10,400 units needed, which drives materials purchasing decisions. Problem 5, 52,900 pounds, required at problem 6, $105,800 cost. Materials purchases create cash disbursements. Problem 7, $93,956 paid this month, and generate accounts payable. Problem 8, $74,060 still owed. Inventory policies determine materials on hand. Problem 9, $12,200 ending raw materials, and finished products ready to ship. Problem 12, $144,000 ending finished goods. Production requirements generate substantial labor costs. Problem 10, $312,000 and establish unit product costs. Problem 11, $60 per unit. Finally, sales volume and unit costs combine to determine cost of goods sold and gross margin. Problem 13, 600,000 COGS generating 100,000 GM, which must fund operating expenses. Problem 14, $78,000 S&A to ultimately generate operating income. Problem 15, $22,000 NOI. This comprehensive planning process is what separates businesses that succeed from businesses that fail reactively. Apple uses this process to coordinate production of millions of devices across multiple product lines globally: iPhone, iPad, Mac, Watch, AirPods, each with its own master budget rolling up to corporate consolidated budgets. Amazon uses this to manage operations across millions of product SKUs, coordinating purchasing, warehousing, and fulfillment. Tesla uses this to scale vehicle production while managing cash carefully across design, manufacturing, and delivery. Starbucks uses this to coordinate coffee purchasing, labor scheduling, and store operations across 35,000 plus locations globally. The mechanics we practiced with Morganton's 10,000 robots are the exact mechanics these giants use, just multiply by 1,000 times or 100,000 times. Understanding these interconnections reveals how decisions cascade. A 10% price increase doesn't just boost revenue 10%. It flows through to collections, impacts receivables, improves gross margin substantially because COGS is fixed per unit, and can double or triple operating income due to operating leverage. A 5% efficiency improvement reducing unit costs from $60 to $57 doesn't just save 5%. It increases gross margin 30%, from 30% to 60%, $100,000 to $130,000, and more than doubles operating income. A 20% demand increase doesn't just require 20% more production. It requires accelerated purchasing, increased labor, more working capital for receivables and inventory, but can increase operating income 50 to 100% due to fixed cost leverage. These ripple effects explain why successful companies obsess over every percentage point of improvement and why market leaders defend advantages ruthlessly. This is why every management role above entry level requires budget responsibility. Marketing managers budget campaigns and forecast ROI. Operations managers budget production and control costs. Sales managers budget territory targets and predict revenue. HR managers budget headcount and compensation. Finance consolidates everything into company-wide plans guiding resource allocation. When you hear earnings calls where CEOs discuss beating guidance or missing projections, they're comparing actual results to master budgets built using exactly this process. You've now done what Fortune 500 planning departments do, built a complete financial plan from sales forecasts through production planning, through profitability projection. This knowledge is power. Economic power, career power, wealth building power. Strategic implications. Why this matters beyond passing exams. Let's discuss the strategic implications of what we built, because this transcends accounting exercises. This is about understanding business strategy, competitive dynamics, wealth creation mechanics, and economic power concentration in capitalism. Pricing power, dynamics. Morganton's $70 price versus $60 cost creates $10 contribution margin, 14.3% gross margin. Companies with strong brands, Apple, Nike, Starbucks, command premium prices generating higher margins despite similar or even higher manufacturing costs. Brand value creates pricing power. Companies in commodity markets, generic manufacturers, basic retailers, face relentless price pressure and thin margins, lacking differentiation forces competing on price. The ability to charge $70 instead of $65 makes the difference between profitable growth and struggling survival. This is why companies invest billions in brand building, customer experience, and differentiation. Pricing power translates directly to bottom line profitability and business sustainability. Operational efficiency, imperatives. Every dollar reduced from $60 unit cost flows straight to gross margin improvement, reduce cost to $57, and gross margin jumps from $100,000 to $130,000, 30% improvement on identical sales. This is why Amazon obsesses over warehouse efficiency, saving seconds per pick. Why Toyota pioneered lean manufacturing, eliminating waste systematically. Why Apple controls supply chains tightly, reducing costs through scale and integration. Small efficiency gains multiplied across millions of units equal billions in additional profitability. Companies that continuously improve operations gain compounding advantages over static competitors. Those efficiency improvements fund innovation, enable competitive pricing, and generate resources for expansion that less efficient competitors can't match. Scale advantages compound relentlessly. That $60,000 fixed S&A expense stays constant regardless of volume. At 10,000 units, it's $6 per unit. At 20,000 units, it drops to $3 per unit. At 50,000 units, it's $1.20 per unit. This is why companies pursue growth aggressively, even sacrificing short-term profits. Scale spreads fixed costs, creating permanent cost advantages. Amazon's massive scale enables pricing smaller competitors can't survive matching. Walmart's scale allows costs smaller retailers can't approach. Costco's scale drives membership value small warehouse clubs can't replicate. This is why winner-take-most dynamics dominate many industries. Scale advantages become insurmountable moats that concentrate market share and profits toward leaders, while smaller players struggle or fail. Cash flow. Timing creates or destroys businesses. The difference between $700,000 sales and $632,800 collections between 105,800 purchases and 93,956 payments highlights why cash management matters as much as profitability. Many profitable companies have failed because they couldn't manage cash through growth phases. Companies with power, Apple, Amazon, Walmart, collect fast from customers but pay suppliers slowly, creating massive working capital advantages, funding growth without expensive external financing. Weaker companies accept slow customer payments, while suppliers demand quick payment, forcing expensive bank financing that extracts wealth through interest payments. This dynamic systematically concentrates wealth. Powerful companies use supplier capital. Smaller players pay banks for operating capital, transferring wealth from smaller businesses to financial institutions and dominant corporations. Inventory, strategy balances, opportunity against risk. The 20% finished goods buffer and 10% materials buffer represent strategic choices about service reliability versus capital efficiency. More inventory means better customer service, can fulfill immediately without delays, but more cash tied up earning no returns. Less inventory frees capital, but risks stockouts losing sales to competitors who can deliver. During COVID supply chain breakdowns and chip shortages, companies with inventory thrived serving customers while lean inventory companies lost sales, market share, and customer relationships permanently. But in normal times, excessive inventory is capital wastefully deployed. Companies that optimize this balance maintain just enough inventory for reliable service without drowning in carrying costs. Mastering this balance is both statistical science and experiential art. The competitive advantage ultimately goes to companies excelling across all dimensions simultaneously. Pricing power from strong brands and differentiation, operational efficiency from continuous improvement cultures, scale advantages from aggressive growth and market share gains, cash flow mastery from strategic working capital management, and optimal inventory strategies from sophisticated demand planning. This is why studying budgeting transcends passing exams. You're understanding how successful businesses actually compete and win, how wealth is systematically created and concentrated, and how economic power compounds through operational excellence across interconnected financial dimensions. Your action plan, making this knowledge build your future. Let's close with concrete actions transforming this knowledge from theoretical understanding to practical capability, because knowledge without application is just entertainment, and you deserve more than entertainment from your education. Action 1. Reconstruct this budget independently from memory. Seriously, close this presentation, open blank paper or Excel, and rebuild all 15 problems using only the original data from slide 2. Struggle through calculations. Make mistakes. Correct them. This active reconstruction embeds knowledge far deeper than passive reviewing ever could. Neurologically, struggle creates learning that observation doesn't. You'll discover which concepts you truly understand versus which you were just following along with. When you can build the complete interconnected budget independently, you've achieved genuine mastery beyond test-taking ability. This is how deep learning happens, through deliberate practice, with struggle, not comfortable repetition. Action 2. Sensitivity analysis. Change assumptions and observe ripples. What if selling price was $75 instead of $70? How does that flow through every calculation? What if inventory policies were 25% instead of 20%? What if payment terms changed to 40/60 instead of 30/70? Modify one variable at a time and trace cascading effects through subsequent calculations. This sensitivity analysis is what finance professionals do constantly, understanding which variables matter most and where businesses have leverage for improvement. Try at least 5 different scenarios. This builds intuition about business drivers that separates good financial analysis from mediocre number crunching. Action 3. Apply this framework to a real company you care about. Choose a company you're interested in, potential employer, stock you own or want to buy, brand you love, competitor to your family business, doesn't matter, just pick one. Pull their financial statements. Public companies publish quarterly reports, available free on their investor relations websites or sec.gov. Try reverse engineering their budgeting process using what you learned. Estimate their unit economics, calculate their cost structure, understand their cash conversion cycle, identify their working capital strategies. You won't have perfect information, but you'll develop analytical skills separating basic accounting knowledge from real business insight. This is how Warren Buffett analyzes investments, digging into operational and financial mechanics until he understands the business better than management does. Action 4. Build your personal master budget for next month. Apply these principles to your own life. Start with income sources, your sales revenue, project collection timing, paycheck dates, gig payments, etc. Plan expenses by category, your COGS and S&A. Account for payment timing differences, credit card due dates, bill payment dates. Track your cash position throughout the month. You'll be amazed how corporate budgeting principles apply directly to personal finance. Students who master personal budgeting have massive advantages in early career years, while peers struggle with debt, financial stress, and limited options. This is practical application paying immediate dividends. Literally, because good personal budgeting enables investing earlier and building wealth systematically. Action 5. Teach this to someone else. Find a classmate, friend, family member, or roommate who hasn't learned this material and explain master budgeting to them using your own examples and explanations. Teaching forces true understanding because you can't fake your way through explaining concepts to others. Gaps in your knowledge become immediately obvious when you try to teach. Plus, helping others succeed builds collaborative and leadership capabilities that employers value beyond technical knowledge. This is how mastery accelerates. Deliberate practice through teaching reveals weak understanding while reinforcing strong understanding. Career connection and economic empowerment. These budgeting skills open doors across all business functions, finance obviously, but also operations production planning, sales revenue forecasting, marketing campaign budgeting and ROI analysis, supply chain procurement planning, strategy, business model analysis, entrepreneurship, startup financial planning. Every company needs people who can translate strategy into operational plans, into financial projections, into resource allocation decisions. This isn't just accounting knowledge. This is business literacy making you valuable, regardless of specific role. The internship or entry-level job you want involves budgeting responsibilities. Demonstrate this competency in interviews, and you immediately stand out from candidates who only know theory without practical application. Final truth. You just completed a comprehensive tour through mastered budgeting, using the exact framework guiding companies from bootstrap startups to Fortune 500 giants. The numbers in this example were manageable for teaching purposes, but the logic scales infinitely. Whether you're planning 10,000 units or 10 million units, $700,000 revenue, or $700 billion revenue, these foundational principles remain constant and universal. This is your formula for understanding how businesses actually plan, operate, generate returns, create wealth, and build power. You've learned the language executives speak, the analysis investors demand, and the planning process separating successful companies from failed ones. Go back to that $22,000 net operating income on $700,000 sales. That 3.1% margin might seem small and barely worth the effort, but multiply it across consistent execution, continuous improvement, and strategic growth, and you build billion-dollar enterprises creating generational wealth. Every major company started somewhere, understanding these fundamentals, executing consistently, improving continuously, and scaling methodically. Now you understand how they did it, the mechanics, the interconnections, the strategic implications, the competitive dynamics. The real question is, what will you build with this knowledge? Will you use it to get a job working for someone else's empire? Or will you use it to build your own? Either way, this knowledge is your passport to economic opportunity. Tomorrow belongs to those who prepare for it today. Your preparation started here. Where you take it from here is entirely up to you. The tools are in your hands now. Use them wisely. Education is our passport to the future. Tomorrow belongs to those who prepare for it today. Now you're prepared. Go build your future.